Good evening. Thanks for Zooming with us for Mondays with MoCo. Let's get started now, and as more folks join us, we'll let them in too. Until we can meet in person, I'm glad you're able to join us via technology. You don't have to wear a mask. You don't have to social distance. Heck, you can even be in your pajamas if you want to. We just have a wonderful presentation. I am Dennis Melby with the Republican Party in Montgomery County. Right now, I'd like to introduce our chairman to say a few words, Chairman Reardon Sullivan. Sully?
Dennis, thank you for that introduction. My name is Reardon Sullivan. I'm the chairman of the Montgomery County Republican Central Committee, and I'd like to welcome everyone to this very exciting speaker series. And tonight we have some really great speakers who are extremely knowledgeable on the subject of immigration. First off, we have Mark. Hi, Mark.
Howdy.
And Mark's going to speak for a while. And we can answer some questions, and we can then turn it over to Lisa. And Lisa will speak for a while. Hi, Lisa.
How are you? Thank you.
And we're glad that everybody will be able to join us. Also, during this, if you have any questions during this webinar, please feel free to add them to the Q&A section. In the bottom of your screen is a little button that says Q&A, and we'll be glad to get to your questions for the specific speakers. And with that, I want to turn it back over to Dennis.
Well, thanks, Chairman Sully. I appreciate that. Welcome to the folks just joining us. We do have great speakers. Time for questions at the end, as Sully said. I'd like to introduce them. Mark Krikurian is a nationally recognized expert on immigration issues, excuse me, and has served as executive director of the Center for Immigration Studies, CIS, since 1995. The center, an independent, nonpartisan research organization in Washington, D.C., examines and critiques the impact of immigration on the United States. The center was established in 1985 to respond to the need for reliable, fact-based research in the immigration area. Now, you frequently see him in the news, on TV, hear him on radio and podcast, and we're so pleased to have him here today. Mark, could you share your thoughts on the state we're in today?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Thanks, Jamie, for putting it together, and the Republican committee for sponsoring this. First of all, I'll just put in a little plug. My think tank, Center for Immigration Studies, is online at cis.org. And if you have a taste for snark and sarcasm, I'm on Twitter at Mark S. as in Stephen, Mark S. Krikurian. Biden obviously made a big deal of wanting to be the anti-Trump on everything, but immigration especially. That was the whole point. That was his campaign platform, was that he was not Donald Trump. And since immigration was such an important element of Trump's message, it's an important element of Biden's message to undo everything Trump did. And there's a tendency for people who are hawkish on immigration to say that Biden and his handlers are really just for open borders. And I kind of think of it a little differently, because they're going to say, well, look, we're not for open borders. We want to keep up this picture of the fence I have behind me, such as it is, to keep trucks from driving over. We're for the borders. And so, it's, as insincere as that might be, I like to think about what the other side is for more accurately as being for unlimited immigration. In other words, they'll still have a border, there'll still be border patrol agents, but the point is not to have any meaningful limits on immigration. And I just want to talk about three things the administration has done over the past couple of weeks that point to that. First thing is the big amnesty bill that the White House floated. They floated a fact sheet about it, but also we have the section by section summary. It goes on for 60 pages for what's in there. And there's two things that are notable. First, they want to give amnesty to everybody who's arrived here as of not 5 years ago, not 4 years ago, not 3 years ago, as of a month and a half ago. January 1st of this year is the cutoff for their amnesty. So basically, anybody who got in gets to stay. And this relates specifically to the unlimited immigration aspect, there's no enforcement in this amnesty package. Now, I can see an argument for wanting to amnesty people who've been here for a long time. It's distasteful, but sometimes you have to deal with reality and, as it exists. But all the previous amnesty plans, whether it's the bill that President Reagan signed back in 1986, the McCain-Kennedy measures that were debated in the mid-2000s during the Bush administration, the Gang of Eight bill that was around in 2013, 2014, all of them at least pretended to have enforcement after the amnesty. So it would be amnesty first, enforcement second. But at least the enforcement was in there. It wasn't sincere, it didn't work out, but it was at least pretended to be there. Republicans who objected said, no, we have to have amnesty first, then we can talk about, we have to have enforcement first, then we can talk about asylum, amnesty. This bill by the administration is not an enforcement first bill. It's not an enforcement second bill. It's an enforcement never bill. There's no enforcement in it. And the point, this gets to the unlimited immigration concept, because if you come in and there's no enforcement, then the limits that we have in the law don't mean anything. The second thing that they've acted on that relates to this unlimited immigration concept is asylum, political asylum, but it doesn't have to just be political. Asylum basically amounts to an illegal immigrant coming and saying, look, I have no right to be here. You have your immigration limits and I'm outside those limits, but you have to let me in anyway because I fear persecution. Well, it is the weakness. Asylum is a weakness of all immigration systems in modern countries, because the whole system that the legislature, whether it's our Congress or parliaments in Europe or what have you, the whole system they set up for X number of people in this category and Y number of people in that category basically is rendered irrelevant if people can just walk up and say, you have to let me in. This administration has done two things that point to how they see asylum as another sort of means of unlimited immigration. The first is they've rolled back the measures that President Trump put in place to try to limit the abuse of asylum, the use of it kind of as a gimmick just to get past the Border Patrol and then you disappear into the country. We don't have a lot of time. I'm not going to go into details. If somebody want to ask me a little more about what was rolled back, I can talk about it. But the point is, they're making it easier to use a claim of asylum as a way of getting into the country. And they are almost certainly, they've talked about this. They haven't done it yet, but they will make it easier to get asylum on grounds that are not within the law, so that you're supposed to be getting asylum based on being persecuted or fear persecution, based on political opinion, religion, race, nationality. Those are pretty understandable. Or membership in a particular social group, which basically means anything you want it to mean. It's an invitation for activist judges in the ACLU just to make up stuff. And this administration is saying, we're going to make up stuff. They want to give asylum to people who are fleeing violent crime, who are fleeing bad home situations, things that asylum is just not for, that frankly would cover pretty much everybody in the world. Again, unlimited immigration is what these guys are about. The third element of this is the deportation rules that the Biden administration has put in place, which is what it boils down to is that only illegal immigrants who have committed violent crime, who have been convicted of violent or serious felonies, can be deported. Illegal immigrants, in other words, get to stay unless they're convicted of some kind of serious felony. And they actually listed the kinds of things that illegal immigrants could commit and not be deported, including fraud, including assault, drunk driving, a whole list of things that now, even if you are an illegal immigrant, you don't get deported for. If you're a legal immigrant with a green card, you have to actually go out of your way to get deported because a green card is shorthand for legal permanent residence. In other words, we give you the right to stay here permanently so that we can deport you. You're not a citizen yet, but you have to really do something pretty serious to get deported. It happens, but not most of the time. What the Biden people are saying is that that same high bar should apply to illegal immigrants as well. And this isn't just him. Nancy Pelosi, even before, I think it was even before Trump's election, said in almost these exact words that not having immigration status, being undocumented, so-called, is not enough of a reason to deport somebody. So that being an illegal alien is not grounds for deportation. Again, it goes back to unlimited immigration. If you can come across the border and you get to stay, as long as you don't kill anybody, then the immigration limits just have no meaning. So when you're going to start in talking about, or even before that, thinking about immigration, I think the way to approach it is to start from the first principle. In other words, what are the two contrary views of immigration? What leads to this unlimited immigration or limited immigration concept? And the principle that the other side, and I say other side, I mean, unfortunately, there are some Republicans who agree with this too. Mostly it's libertarians and leftists, but increasingly, even regular Democrats and a lot of business people hold this perspective that everybody in the world has the right to move here, with exceptions that we make. If you're a terrorist or have Ebola or what have you, but everybody else gets to come here. Our immigration law is based in a completely different perspective. And frankly, just about everybody in the world thinks about it this way, which is that no one has the right to come here, except when we make exceptions. You have, you marry somebody or you're an Einstein or what have you. In other words, no one's allowed in with exceptions that we make. Or the other perspective is that everyone's allowed in unless we have specific reasons to keep them out. Now, the other side, and by this I mean immigration expansionists or unlimited immigration people, will say, no, we're not for unlimited immigration. No, we want limits. So the thing I always ask, I put somebody in a very uncomfortable position once at a debate at American University because she'd never been asked this before. I said, okay, you're for limits on immigration. What are you willing to do to a guy who comes across the border illegally tomorrow or overstays his short-term visa and doesn't leave? What are you willing to do about that guy who broke these rules, who came here in excess of the limits? He's not a rapist. He's not a murderer, maybe a perfectly fine person, maybe just a regular guy like everybody else. If you're not willing to make that guy leave, to track him down, to arrest him, and to throw him out of the country, then you're for unlimited immigration, period. So let me touch on three things I think that we need to advocate as necessary for an immigration policy to be sustainable. One is, and I'll talk about sort of in these three things: amnesty, asylum, and deportation. With regard to amnesty, there need to be enforcement measures physically in place, up and running before we even talk about even giving work permits to anybody. I'm kind of a squish on amnesty under some circumstances. It's hard to believe I'm kind of a squish, but we have parking ticket amnesties, we have tax amnesties. Sometimes you have to deal with reality. I don't like it, but you do. But you have to make sure the problem is fixed before you clean up the mess that the old problem created. If your sink is overflowing, you don't start by mopping the floor. You start by turning off the faucet. And that would mean there's a number of things you have to do. Just quickly, the three things I think you need to have: mandatory e-verify. That's an online system. So when a business hires somebody, they check whether they're being lied to or whether the person is telling them the truth. You just run through against Social Security system, name, date of birth, social security number. Are they real? Do they match? In a lot of cases now, depending on what ID they show you, the ID will pop up, either one in the system, and you can see whether it's the same or it's a doctor. That's widely used now, but it's still voluntary. That needs to be mandatory before any discussion of any kind of amnesty. The second thing is a check-in, check-out system for visitors. Because what most people don't realize is something like half of new illegal aliens every day come in legally as tourists or students or what have you, and then just stay. They just don't leave. The check-in part of our system is a lot better than it used to be, but the check-out part is not much. It still doesn't really work. And if you don't know when people leave, you don't know who's still here. And the third thing is sanctuary cities. I think we're going to have some more discussion maybe of sanctuary cities later this evening, but a sanctuary city basically is one that when the federal government asks them to hold on to a criminal that they have arrested for other reasons, he's a drunk driver, he beat up his wife, whatever it is, hold on to them because he was flagged by in the Homeland Security computers so they can come and get him and remove him from the country. A sanctuary city says, no, we're just going to let this guy go anyway. That has to be prohibited in federal law with teeth before you can talk about legalizing people who are already here. And then the last, so those are the things that would amnesty before you even have an amnesty discussion. In asylum, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but the most important concept is asylum is supposed to be a last resort. If you're floundering in the water, you don't pick and choose among which lifesaver you're going to grab onto because one looks better and one is bigger. You grab whatever is at hand if you're genuinely desperate. If you have passed through other countries that have their own asylum systems where you're not being persecuted, you're not really an asylum seeker. And if people can pass through Mexico, which has its own big, extensive asylum bureaucracy, they have a website. Comar is the name of the agency. You can go to the website. If you understand Spanish, they have a video there on how to apply for asylum in Mexico. If you've bypassed all that and just go to Texas, you're not an asylum seeker. You're just looking to join your relatives or get a higher wage job. And then the last thing on deportation, everybody has to be potentially subject to deportation at all times. This doesn't mean that, there's no prioritization in law enforcement. Obviously, all law enforcement has to make decisions, priorities. But what this administration is saying, even more than the Obama people, because we're going to look back on the Obama administration as the good old days pretty soon, is not that they're just going to prioritize the worst, the illegal immigrants who are really the worst, hardest cases. Sure they are. What they're saying also, though, is that if you're not one of the hard cases, we're going to ignore you. And the IRS doesn't do that. The IRS obviously makes a priority of gangsters and money launderers, what have you, that sort of thing. They have their high priority targets, but they also have routine enforcement. If the IRS said, so long as you're not a Russian mobster trying to launder money, we don't really care whether you pay your taxes or not. Who the hell would pay their taxes? There has to be a certain level of routine enforcement to ensure that there is compliance with the rules. And this administration's, not just their actions, but their whole perspective is essentially the equivalent of the IRS saying, if you don't pay your taxes, we're going to ignore it. You should do it, but we're going to ignore it unless you're a money launderer or a gangster. So the reason we got here, I just want to finish up, is that the Democrats really have become radicalized on him. The mainstream of the Democratic Party has become radicalized on immigration. And, when Dennis introduced me, he said we're nonpartisan, and we really are. I mean, I have Democrats on my board, my donors, my staff, but they're all sort of older style Democrats. They're liberals, not leftists. They're patriotic Americans who just have different views on things like taxes and abortion and what have you. That's not what today's Democratic Party is about, I'm afraid, and that's not good for the country. But it is maybe good for Republicans because the Democrats not only are so radical in their rhetoric now on immigration, the consequences are going to be inescapable. We're seeing the border crisis develop all over again now. The Post had a story, I think it was in today's paper, but it may have been posted yesterday. The New York Times did, about people coming across the border again and just being let go at the bus station. And, you know, this is why Trump won in 2016. And I can say this because personally I'm a Republican. I think this may be why Ron DeSantis is going to win in 2024. So let me end it there. And if you want to do questions now, Dennis, or later, however you want to do that.
Thank you. That's very good, very thought-provoking. Jamie, do you have any questions that people have given us?
Yes, I have a few. The first is, what is the next sanctuary bill we need to follow in regards to either an EO or even in the House? You know, Nancy Pelosi will.
The real issue for sanctuary legislation is at the state and local levels. That's the thing, is that there isn't an EO. That I don't think there was one on sanctuary, because they're all for sanctuary. In other words, quite honestly, the Biden administration wants a sanctuary country. Forget about sanctuary cities. It's at the state and local levels where you need to fight sanctuary provisions. And don't be fooled by the sanctuary proponents who will say, well, you know, we don't want our local law enforcement, getting involved in immigration laws, enforcing immigration laws. That's not what ICE wants. ICE doesn't want local cops walking around saying, hey, Paco, where's your papers? That's just not, it's illegal, it's wrong, it's just inefficient and stupid. What they want is when a local jurisdiction arrests somebody for a local crime, as happens every day, and the person comes up in DHS's computers, because when you're arrested now, your fingerprints are scanned. It's not like in the old days with ink, it's all electronic. Those fingerprints go to the FBI and to DHS. DHS knows about most of the illegal immigrants because they may have been stopped by the Border Patrol a couple times. They may have been deported before. They may have come in legally and then not left. So all those people, they have paperwork on. And if they're arrested, they know about it. And so all ICE really wants is when somebody is flagged and they have the resources and the wherewithal to go and get that guy, for the jurisdiction to hold on to that person for the 48 hours that federal law permits, so that ICE can come and get them. If they refuse to do that, that's what a sanctuary city law is, and that's where you have to work at, city, county, state legislatures to either overturn that or prevent it.
Then another one, this kind of bounces off of that one. This question says, the executive branch is responsible for law enforcement. Where did Biden get the authority to not enforce immigration law?
The rationale they use is that they have to prioritize resources. No law enforcement agency can enforce all infractions of the law all the time. That's just not the way reality works. And so what they're saying is that we have to prioritize, which they do. They then kind of steal a base and they say those instances that are not in our top priorities basically get a pass. And like I said before, that would be the equivalent of the IRS saying, as long as you're not a money laundering mobster, we don't care whether you pay your taxes or not. That's not what the executive is supposed to do. And in fact, the Constitution specifically says that the executive branch is tasked with faithfully executing the laws. The problem there is who has standing to sue them. So they basically get away with it because it's hard to stop them.
Thanks, Mark. We'll get back to a few more questions in a little bit. Right now, I'd like to bring Lisa Kim into the discussion. Lisa Kim is the chairperson of Citizens for a Strong and Safe Howard County, the nonpartisan citizens organization fighting the implementation of sanctuary policies in their county. Lisa is a former city council member from New Carrollton, a former candidate for the Howard County Council, and an advocate for senior citizens, adults and children with special needs, Neighborhood Watch, schools, and the PTA. She earned a well-deserved reputation as a strong, strict legislator, intolerant of corruption, bias, or favoritism. We're so happy to have you here, Councilwoman Kim.
Thank you
Please
for
tell us
having
a
me.
little bit about the fight for against sanctuary policies in Howard County.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. Good evening to everyone. So I'm chairperson for Citizens for a Strong and Safe Howard County in opposition to Council Bill 63, which is our latest sanctuary county bill. In 2017, we faced this struggle once before. We had a 3-5 vote on our county council to make us sanctuary county. It went to the county executive, Alan Kittleman, and he vetoed it. There was no supermajority to override the veto, so we were not sanctuary county. We were promised in 2018 that sanctuary county was put to bed, that we would not see it again, that the citizens made their voice very clear. When we had hundreds of people come out and testify against it in 2017. However, COVID and Christmas, and here we are again. They passed sanctuary county December 7th with the council. It was signed by the county executive December 10th. That started the clock on it becoming law in 61 days, which would be tomorrow. It also started the clock on the referendum process for 60 days, which was today. So today was the deadline for us to get 50% of the signatures required to bring it to referendum in 2022. We submitted those names and signatures on Friday the 5th. We submitted 6,885 signatures to get it on the ballot in 2022. And that suspends the bill from becoming law until our next deadline, which is the extension of 30 days to get the next 50% in. And we'll do that, no problem. I'm confident we're gonna get this on the ballot, no problem at all. I have to say that it's been pretty disheartening because, you know, we fought this really hard in 2017. We had hundreds of people come out, we had emails, we had testimony, people staying until 2 in the morning to get their 2 and 3 minutes of testimony in. And one of our surprising demographics that came out against Sanctuary County in 2017 was our legal immigrants and our naturalized American citizens. They do not support illegal immigration. They believe that laws matter. They believe that there's value in becoming an American citizen and having a home country and being patriotic and celebrating your flag and what we stand for here in America. So we had to go out of the state, given, you know, the weather and COVID, and find a company that would come in and do our signature gathering. And we found one, and they've been on the ground here for about 5 weeks, 10 to 15 people every day, about 12 hours, circulating around the county, from parking lots to park and rides to door knocking and just meeting people out and about as they go about their business in Howard County. I will say that this bill is especially egregious. It even goes above and beyond the 2017 bill in that it actually penalizes Howard County employees who do not help an illegal immigrant circumvent federal law. So there's going to be a disciplinary board that's created. These employees will go in front of this disciplinary board, and then the people who are populating this board will determine what the punishment is to the employee for not helping the illegal immigrant circumvent federal law. So we have been paying very close attention to what's going on in Montgomery County. And we don't want to be Montgomery County, I'm sorry to say, guys. You know, we saw this in the summertime. We saw that you had the 9 sexual assaults in 30 days, some of them child rapes. We don't have any interest in that here in Howard County. We've already had to deal with MS-13 some years ago. We created a human trafficking task force. We created an anti-child pornography task force. And sometimes the only probable cause that we have to get rid of known criminals is their immigration status. And this bill is going to take that away from us. So we're going to knowingly have human traffickers, people who engage in child porn in this county, and we can't remove them based on their immigration status. We're going to have to wait for them to commit a crime. And, you know, we'll have people who commit crimes who, you know, they'll get out of jail. ICE won't even know that they're getting out. They'll be let out. They'll be in our county. committing more crimes until, something, I guess, even more egregious happens and they'll actually be deported. But, our infrastructure is already stressed. Our schools are overcrowded. Our roads are overcrowded. Our programs don't have enough resources to go around already for the citizens who are here now. And to just be importing people to spend resources that we're already short of, to me doesn't make any sense. And we're not speaking of the people here who are here now. We're speaking of when you put a sanctuary county beacon on a county like Howard County, where we have high median incomes, we have high property taxes, we have great programs here because we do have the resources to have these great programs and beautiful schools. We just don't want to be importing things that we can't afford. We already have a 6-hour wait on average in our emergency room. It just, to me, makes no sense. So I know I'm not the only one. We've managed to get 7,000 signatures to get this repealed in a very short matter of time. I was on a call earlier tonight with the Baltimore Sun, and they asked me if we had taken a poll to sort of get the pulse of the county if there was support for repeal. And I said 7,000 signatures in 4 weeks, I think, is a pretty good poll. We've managed to raise $65,000 in 4 weeks to pay for the effort. The fundraising is still continuing. We have a great problem in that our signatures are outpacing our fundraising. Since it's the signatures that we need for the ballot, that's the problem we want to have. So we're confident we're going to get on the ballot. We're confident it's going to be repealed. For the things that Mark spoke of, we know that visa overstays are a problem. We know that illegal immigration coming in from the borders is a problem. And we just don't want to have a beacon on Howard County. And we don't want to become Montgomery County and have the problems that you guys are having in your county. And we've actually, of all the fundraising we've gotten, we only have five people who have given who are not inside Howard County. 2 are from out of state who actually were previous Howard County residents, but the other 3 are actually Montgomery County residents. So we thank you for helping us not have to face some of the problems that you guys are having right now.
Well, thank you so much. I think it's interesting you say you don't want to become Montgomery County because there are an awful lot of us here that don't want to be like Montgomery County too. I know that you remember the big rally that we had about 1.5 years ago, where we had hundreds and hundreds of people down at the county council objecting to the idea that the county employees can't work with ICE and can't have to send the illegal immigrant criminals back to their immigrant communities to prey on them, and how upset everybody was. So hopefully it doesn't reach a point like that in your county. I do have a question here from somebody in Burtonsville for you. It said, I am pleased that your signature petition is on track to put the Howard County sanctuary law on the November 2022 ballot. That said, what can non-Howard County residents do to help you between now and November? Can I sign up somewhere and volunteer in Howard County? How can I help you with what you're doing?
Oh, that's great. So we have a static location for signature gathering at a plaza in Ellicott City. You could shoot me an email at strongandsafehowardcounty@gmail.com, and we could try to get you to volunteer there. We're open 12 to 5 there every day. We also have a website, repealsanctuarycounty.com. You can put your email in there and get on our list. And we have things coming up that you could possibly join in. But really right now we need fundraising. Again, the signatures are outpacing the fundraising. We hired the company to come in and gather, and it is an expensive effort. And this is one of the things that makes it so frustrating, because you want to be a citizen and you want to engage in direct democracy by getting things on the ballot through the people so the people can vote directly upon it. And the process is set up so that it's as impossible or as difficult as it could possibly be. The government does not want the people involved. So it's an extremely expensive effort. It's $100,000 to get this on the ballot. And we could use your help. If you can afford it, please give anything you can give. Every little bit counts. Most of the donors that we have are $150 or less, and we've raised over $65,000. So it really is just every person, a grassroots efforts, just giving that little bit, and together we we make something big and we can get this done, and we can send a message to these elected officials that you're going to listen to the people now. Enough with this cramming your agenda down our throat. We've sent you the message in 2017 that we don't want to be sanctuary county. You know, it's a shame that we just can't, as people, go to our elected officials and say, we elected you, here's what we would like for you to do, and we expect you to do it. And when you go against what we ask you to do, it's extremely disheartening. And then, like I said, the process to go against the elected officials is so difficult and really just set up to work against the people. So please, just any little bit you can give can help us cross that finish line and get us on the ballot and pay this company for their signature gatherers. And hopefully we can send a message not only to Howard County elected officials, but to the state of Maryland, who are now in the process of setting up their immigration commission, which will be a ruse basically to pretend that, you know, we have all these needs that we don't really have. So then they can cram illegal immigration through us, you know, on the state level. So hopefully the effort here in Howard County can send a message statewide that sanctuary county is just not something that we want to do here.
Thank you. Jamie, we got a few more questions here.
I was muted. Sorry about that. I have one here, and forgive me if this isn't what your question is about, but I think it's about the border wall. So this is from Mark. They say, can you comment on the agreements that the Trump administration entered with certain states, and what will be the effect of those agreements?
Yeah, these were agreements that the Trump administration entered into with Texas and several other states and some counties too, county in North Carolina. And the point of it is that they agreed to work with ICE, and ICE agreed to give them a heads up and kind of a voice in any potential changes to immigration enforcement policy. It was basically a way to try to make it hard for the Biden people who were coming in to undo immigration enforcement. And the Biden people have basically canceled those agreements, but it's going to go into court because it gives those states standing to sue ICE if they don't follow the terms of those agreements. So it was a kind of political tactic by the Trump people, a clever one, frankly, to try to hamstring, not just hamstring the Biden people, but to make sure that the various states and localities involved had grounds to sue and get into court and not just be thrown out because they didn't have standing.
Jamie, you have another question?
Yes, this one is, do all counties report crimes specifically committed by illegals?
No, the way it works, like I'd said, is in 2013, all police departments in the country were finally hooked up to DHS's system, so that all fingerprinting was digitized as of most places was before that. 2013 is when it was finished. It was a Bush II administration initiative, so that when somebody is booked and fingerprinted, again, not for anything related to immigration, they're drunk driving, you know, they held up a bank, whatever it is, those fingerprints now automatically go, well, first to each state has a clearinghouse. From there, it goes to FBI and to DHS. And so if you're an illegal immigrant who has never been stopped by the Border Patrol, wasn't a visa overstayer, none of that stuff, never been deported, then DHS may well not know about you. But most illegal immigrants they know about, so that the local jurisdiction doesn't have to do anything. And in fact, it's one of the reasons that the anti-borders people have gotten so active in pushing sanctuary cities, is that it used to be that when illegal immigrants were arrested, it was very unlikely anybody knew about it, because, you know, fingerprints were done on, you know, ink on piece of paper, and there was no way to run it by DHS. It's only once everything became digitized and electronic that ICE now knows. And so they get it every day. There's the facility is up outside Burlington, Vermont. And you know, they get flags all the time on their computer system of, you know, this person who's in our system has been arrested in, you know, in Wyoming for beating up his girlfriend. They then say, okay, how important is this guy for us to get out of here? In other words, what priority is he for us? And do we have the wherewithal to go and get him within the 48 hours that federal law provides for? And if so, they send what's called a detainer or detainer notice, which the Obama people said, well, that's just voluntary. It's not supposed to be voluntary, but the language is ambiguous in federal law. So that, anyway, the point is the locals don't have to do anything. The DHS is the one that says, please hold this guy. And those that refuse to do so, that's basically what makes them a sanctuary city. And if they cooperate, then that's what ICE wants. I mean, if anything, at the minimum, ICE would appreciate literally just being told when someone was going to be released, when and where, so they could kind of be there and say, you know, hello, come with us. And if you're not doing that, you really are obstructing the enforcement of the law. I mean, it's outrageous. And can I make a quick plug tomorrow? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No problem.
We have a book panel tomorrow. I don't think it doesn't work well on this. You can't see it on border enforcement. We have a new book out by one of our people about the efforts to stop jihadists from coming across the border. And this is not some sensationalist thing. This guy is an intelligence analyst for many years. He's got top people from FBI elsewhere on it. So that's going to be 1 o'clock tomorrow on our website at cis.org. Sorry, Lisa, go ahead.
Oh, that's right. I was just going to piggyback on what you said. You know, one of the quotes that we got from a citizen in Howard County for our press packet said, sanctuary county and sanctuary policies puts the welfare of the illegal immigrant above the welfare of the American citizen. And I thought that was the most perfect quote. It really just sums it up perfectly.
It's even worse than that, Lisa. It puts the welfare of the illegal immigrant criminal above the welfare of even regular illegal aliens who aren't criminals. Because where do illegal immigrant criminals live? I live in Vienna in Fairfax County. I don't have a lot of illegal aliens living around me and not many illegal alien criminals. They're living in the very neighborhoods where other immigrants, including illegal immigrants, live. So it's actually, it's perverse, this idea of pushing sanctuary cities.
And you're absolutely right about that. One of the talking points that, you know, the people who are pro-sanctuary puts out, and it's completely false, is that illegal immigrants living with illegal immigrant criminals are more likely to come out and testify if they don't fear deportation themselves. Well, for one, it's a falsehood because there's already protections in place for illegal immigrants who testify in court to sort of help society get someone in jail or get someone deported. But it's a falsehood in that illegal immigrants who are testifying against other illegal immigrants will more likely testify if they know that illegal immigrant that they're testifying against is going to be deported. They're less likely to testify if they believe that that illegal immigrant is going to be let loose back into their community.
And even before you get to the point of testifying, we have a study that's almost ready to come out. The reporting of crimes, before you even get to that point, the whole point that the sanctuary people make is that immigrants will be less likely to report crimes, call the police, if there's more likely to call and report crimes if there's a sanctuary law. We in fact have looked at, there's a federal survey, a crime reporting survey. It's not true. It just isn't true. So that there is no rationale, law enforcement rationale for sanctuary policies. It's purely motivated by the desire to prevent enforcement of immigration laws.
I know that during the election, you know, we had our headquarters open almost 24 hours a day. People were flooding in. And one of the most interesting things was that the immigrant American citizens were the ones that were so adamant about how we've got to get our immigration under control.